Hi, everybody. It's Bob Ost. It's Friday at 5:00, 5:30 actually. And so, of course, it's our TRU Community Gathering. For those of you who know us, for those of you who don't know us, it's still our TRU Community Gathering. And we do this every Friday at 5:30. We open the room at 5 and we start our conversations at 5:30. And hopefully some of you out there in podcast land and in YouTube land will find us and become interested in what we do. If you want to be part of the conversation and be in the room with us, that I can make that happen. I've got an in. Just email me, trunltd@aol.com, trunltd@aol.com. Put you on a list and you'll be invited every week and you'll get the link. This, I believe it's our 158th or 159th consecutive conversation that we've had since April 17th, 2020. So everybody knows something happened in 2020 that sort of changed us and changed our world. It was called COVID. It was called shutdown. It was called quarantine. It was called a mess. I had to find a way of keeping my programs running and viable. And so the answer seemed to be Zoom. So here we are in Zoom. I learned how to do Zoom. I learned how to create a Zoom room and have people come in here and be part of these conversations every week. At the very early weeks of COVID, this apparently was a lifesaver, I hear, for many, many people who just didn't know where to turn and what to do. So I've been very honored and pleased and surprised in some ways that we've had people come in every week. We have 30 to 90 people in this room. And now that we're no longer in a forced shutdown, now that COVID is somewhat under control, we still have this. We're still doing this because with or without a quarantine, people have a need to be together. People have a need for community. So here we are. We're offering an opportunity for people to be together and talk about things that affect us and interest us in theater. And our conversations have really sort of changed obviously over 3 years. Now that we're out of shutdown and we're back in live performance, we're talking about a lot more of the usual theater conversation, the usual stuff that happens in theater. It's not all about Zoom. It's not all about virtual. It's about the art. And we've had a lot of guests over the past 2-3 years who've talked a lot about there seems to be we lean a little bit towards the commercial theater world. And I've got a lot of writers who are just not commercial writers, and they know that, they understand that. They've actually said to me, can we talk about like less traditional theater forms? So first name that came to my mind was Mark Russell. And Mark Russell, who has been running the Under the Radar Festival at the Public Theater, and actually before the Public Theater as well, but it's been, for the most part, it's like 20 years at the Public Theater. If I get anything wrong, you'll correct me, Mark. And I want to bring him into the room. I want you to meet him. So Mark, you can take yourself off mute now and you can introduce yourself. You have a pretty interesting history. I don't know if you want to go back before performing Performance Studio 122 or
PS 122.
Yeah, PS.
I came to the city to be a director and ended up directing a theater, which was luckily the Alternative Space Performance Space 122, located in the former PS 122 school at First Avenue and 9th Street in the East Village. And I'd ran that for 21 years. And then did some freelance. But I have this idea of a festival called Under the Radar. And I was able to get some funding and start that. And it's been 18 years of doing that. We had 18 editions.
Well, that's one of the key questions is what made you want to do Under the Radar Festival? You were in an alternative space. Explain to people what an alternative space is. Explain how much bigger theater is than many of us are aware.
It's very much like regular theater. It's just a room, but it's a room where we did dance and music and film and all sorts of things. It was multidisciplinary art space, and we had two spaces. And one of the smaller ones, I would run more long runs of theater pieces or pieces that lean towards theater. And upstairs did more 1 or 2 week runs of things. And there was, all through that, we did over 2,000 shows for the 21 years I was there.
And how did you find the shows? What tell us a little bit about your taste. What did you look for?
The shows came to me. I have a, oh God. I would guess I have an eccentric taste. It is as far as I'm interested in what might be called experimental theater or multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary theater.
Now we're there.
Yeah, we're there. And I'm actually, through all of this, I'm interested in why do theater now. That's basically the code that I've been working with at Under the Radar for 18 years, is to basically bringing together people that are making theater. And why are you doing it now when you could shoot a film on your phone?
And what are some of the answers that you've gotten to that question?
Each of them come up with a different answer, pretty much. Some don't have actors at all in it. Some are one-on-one. Some are 1-on-10. Some are huge, almost rock concerts. It's but there are people that feel they need the best way that they can tell their story is in a live event. And
well, we talk about live events in other contexts as well. We talk about theater versus film, and one of the things that people have said in our conversations over the past 3 years is that in theater, unlike film, the audience is one of the characters. Basically, the audience really completes it. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of us are dedicated to theater. We love the live experience. And also, when you come right down to it, theater really was derived from church ritual. And originally it was a communion. It was about communion. It was about community getting together and having a common experience and hopefully finding catharsis. So
I'm actually more interested in the ancient than I am in being cutting edge.
Tell me more about that.
Well, I'm looking for theater that is sort of grounded in, oh God, often it's very, very simple, and it's very close to a spiritual experience, or a political experience, and very close to church. I was an acolyte, and I should have been a priest, but I didn't believe in this God thing or the Jesus story, so I had to go to theater. And so we're just
sorry about the phone.
Yeah, that's all right. I don't know what
anyway, that was my phone.
Oh, okay. So I'm just, I'm in that search as well. I don't want to scare anyone off, but I came up in Texas working with things, and some of the entry drug was West Side Story, and then later Hair. But I also had an uncle that sent me copies of Plays and Players, an English magazine, and I was turned on to Sam Shepard and Robert Wilson, a lot of people before they were that well known over here. At least, or like outside of New York City. So and I started, was attracting me, and eventually I went to college at the University of Texas, and I worked with a mentor who was a Polish woman named Jagienka Zik, and then I was chasing Grotowski for a short while.
Jason
Actually,
Grotowski, that sounds like a great title for a play.
I got a sort of a scholarship to go on this special trip to Poland with a group of people. And on my way back, I stopped in New York, and I didn't make it back to Texas for about 9 months.
We gave birth to something during those 9 months, I assume.
Huh? I don't know. No, I found a job and a place to stay, and I just kept basically touring, seeing New York like a tourist or like a theater goer. When I came, there was this festival called A Bunch of American in experimental theaters, and they were doing a festival, and it included the Performance Group, the Wooster Group, Richard Foreman, Meredith Monk. I mean, it was an amazing collection of people, a great, incredible introduction.
Well, I want to go back and push the point that I think is a point for a lot of people in the room. But a lot of people in the room they're writers who they don't necessarily feel like they fit into the usual mold, and they keep wanting to find, where do I find opportunities to have my work done? In particular, how do you judge some of the work that I think you've done over the years has had improvisational aspects to it, and you wouldn't necessarily get a script to read. You would get a concept because you said you deal with multi.
Yeah, I mean, I would tell people that I don't read. And I mostly work what is now been called devised theater.
Devised theater, that's it. Yeah.
The best, that's the most positive way of saying what we do. That isn't like, it's not playwritten theater, it's not ensemble theater, it's not this or that, it's not dance. So it's devised. It's a group of people coming together and making a show. Sometimes that involves writers, and we've been able to, at Under the Radar, we've exposed folks like Terrell McCraney brought Brother Size. His first showing of Brother Size was at Under the Radar in New York. So we also embrace writers, but often they're directing their own work, or it's coming from a different angle, or they're working on that work with a collection of people, that are more equal in the room than the regular producer, playwright, director, cast, stage manager. No, that we make a lot of our theater, the formula which we make theater in this country.
Right, we do have a formula, and there is a classic idea about what theater is, and I think I'm trying to push as much as possible to get people to think outside that, outside of what the usual is. A question: PS 122 performance space was a relatively small black box. Yes.
It was a room of about 2,500 square feet. It was, if you've ever seen the movie Fame, all of the dance programs were in that room.
Okay.
I used to be in the office where they told the dancer to go back to technical school. She'll never cut it as a dancer. And the stairwell scenes, all of that happened at PS 122. They wouldn't allow them to use the real high school for performing arts, so they made one for a summer in 1979. They threw all the artists out and gave them other spaces. And then when we came back to this thing that's actually cleaned up and made like a set. And we kept going.
When you moved from PS 122 to the Under the Radar Festival. Actually, you didn't do an Under the Radar Festival immediately at Public Theater, correct?
No, no, no. I did a version while I was employed by the PS 122 down in Texas, and it was called Fresh Terrain. And then some funders saw that, and they thought they trusted me to make another conference. And I brought it up and did it at St. Anne's Warehouse. It was called Under the Radar. That was pretty successful, and Oscar Eustace was there.
That was fortunate.
Yeah, when he got the big job, I was one of the first people he invited to come and work with him.
We're going to talk about some of the things that happened recently, but I'm going to hold off on that yet.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I came with my own money at that time, some grant money, and he knew my work from performance space so long, and we'd been in the same circles for a long time.
A question to you would be, was there any shift in terms of your art and what you were doing from PS 122 to the Under the Radar Festival? Was Under the Radar Festival perhaps a more focused view of what it was you were trying to do for 21 years before that?
Well, PS 122 was a festival that never stopped all year round. And we had 2 to 3 things going every weekend. We had shows that would start at 11 and end at 4 a.m. So, and it was much more about performance, which is, I'm actually more comfortable calling the work I do performance than it is theater.
I think the writers would also like to know what that means to them. Do they? You have, how do writers fit into the scheme of things for you if it's performance?
There are, well, obviously many of them make and do their own performances, their own solo performances. They're written, or they are putting them on people. And it just depends on the sort of the skewed look at the theater world, or the context, the process of it. I would say that if, say, Mark Rylance was just coming up to the East Village, and he did his all-male version of whatever it was, As You Like It or something, in the whole doublet, the whole sort of exactly as it might have been seen by Shakespeare, that would be a radical enough thing for me to include it within Under the Radar or PS 122.
Well,
unfortunately, I missed it when he was, I missed Mark. He predates me. So a critical thing you can do is something well.
What were some of your favorite pieces at PS 122? What were some of the let me rephrase this. We're used to thinking of theater in commercial terms. I mean, I don't mean for that to happen, but it's just the world that we're, especially when you live in New York and Broadway is sort of dominating everything. We think in commercial terms, so our gauge of success is really, did it make money? What is the gauge of success? How do you gauge the success of the pieces that you've had in your theater and in your festival?
I mean, for me, it's how it lands with its audience. I'm interested in the intersection between audience and artists, and whether there's a real communication there, and there's a real authentic experience that comes out of that. Sometimes that can mean that only just one person gets their mind changed, but I'm interested in those collisions. I mean, it's funny because no one makes money in the theater unless you like get some huge home run hit, you
Right.
know. Uh,
It's a home run culture.
it's a home run culture, and it's really hard to do this stuff, and it's very expensive.
I think that's why so many of us are aching for opportunities to be artists, be theater artists, without having that pressure. Which
Yeah.
is one of the reasons why I thought you were an interesting guest for us today.
Well, I mean, I'm all for that, and I'm trying to relieve that pressure, you know, and find those. PS 122 was sort of like a clubhouse, an East Village clubhouse, where all the theater kids came and put stuff up on the wall, and I would, I would program people like elevator repair service that came in early on and did something, and it actually didn't work that well. But there were a lot of people coming to see it. And I was going, well, there's something here that I don't understand. And so I invited them back. I could do that. And then they did something else. And then they finally did this thing that was sort of based on Summer and Smoke called Cab Legs. And it clicked for me. And the thing that they did, elevator repair services, they did all of their lines as if they were in a very intimate movie. So not everything could be heard. And the opening night, someone actually in the audience said, like, speak up and project. And they were going against the cardinal sin or the cardinal rule of theaters that you hear all the words.
Well, I think one of the breakout pieces was it the Great Gatsby or
Yes.
Gats? They called it Gats,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
And basically it was word for word. It was the novel, wasn't it?
Well, it's the Great Gatsby. It's the novel. It's
No,
the
but I mean,
American novel.
they actually,
But they did the whole damn thing.
yeah,
Every word. It took 6 hours or so.
right. Um,
Yeah.
and we have transcript plays these days too, and that's another form that's become more and more familiar. Even made it to Broadway with "Is This a Room?" Um,
Yeah. This is now I hear it's a really beautiful film. We have to go see that film.
one of the producers of the show is with us today, by the way.
Oh, cool.
Question. I have so many questions for you. Is there a definable difference between what you were doing at PS 122 and what evolved and became Under the Radar, or was it just a seamless transition? And when you got to the public theater, did anything change for you in terms of what you were doing?
Yes. I mean, when I got finally to the public theater, which had a very much more theater audience, and my boss was Oscar. So I had to really like measure if I was going to bring something, I wanted to make sure that Oscar knew about it or that it would be all right. He would not lose his job because I had done this, crazy Palestinian show. So
I want to hear more about that crazy Palestinian show.
we did a few, but the so it was also I felt like I was only able to play half the piano, which was theater. And when I was at the PS 122 or in my other festivals I've run, I got to play with dance and music and performance art and installation. And it's just you can do more things. You can shape a different story. And each festival sort of has its own story or its own themes that I don't necessarily know when I put them together, but they sort of come out. And so I missed actually not being able to include dance in Under the Radar. And I sneak it in there as often as I can.
Okay, you sneak it in there, do you? So I guess I do want to remind the room that you can put questions into the chat, and if you have any questions or comments that you want Mark to address. I'm still following the thread that I kind of wanted to start with, which is tell us a little bit about some of your favorite shows, why they were your favorite shows. I mean, I know you don't have a favorite show. You can't, it's like having a favorite kid, but some shows that really were memorable for you that happened in your theater. Did you know that they were going to be that good? Did they surprise you? How
Yeah.
did they happen?
Um, I mean, there's so many, but Karen Finley was one of the people that did a lot of work at PS 122 in the early days, and they
So
were
do you have a lot of chocolate
transformative.
syrup?
Yep,
Lots of
yams,
chocolate,
chocolate
lots of
for
chocolate
clearly.
syrup.
Yep, a lot of nudity and glitter. But they were so powerful, those performances. I don't know if you've seen her, or seen videos of those performances, but she sort of brings up this guttural persona that is more of a poet. And they were very powerful pieces, very feminist, very political, and yet shocking and beautiful. And that, so Karen is always in there. Ethel Eichelberger did a
Oh
lot of
boy.
his solo shows. He came from the Ridiculous Theater Company, and was an amazing actor himself when he was Jimmy. But Ethel, yeah, brought like a solo Lear in all sorts of things. Um, he was kind of a triple threat performer, and really amazing, an amazing drag performer. We did a piece by Ron Athey, a couple pieces by Ron Athey, and Ron is known for piercing himself on stage and other things. And so it's a little transgressive there. And he's also HIV positive. So it was about him taking his body and owning it, in a sense, taking his disease and owning it. And those were really powerful times,
You see, just this conversation, just hearing you say this, I think gives me a much clearer idea of what you meant by the performance is what you're looking for. I'm sure that you did scripted pieces as well over the years.
Yeah, the thing is with like Ron's piece, there's a lot of people that go pierce themselves in burlesques and in tents and comedies and carnivals. He had a soundtrack and a script, and it was a full-on multifaceted experience. And he was usually telling his story or referencing parts of the world that made it a performance, made it a theater performance.
I want to ask the room, is everybody clear now what we're talking about when Mark talks about the importance of performance in terms of his aesthetic? I want to find something for people to hang out onto who are playwrights who maybe want to write things. There's room for written scripts as well.
Totally. I was just, I mean, actually, there's a lot of opportunities for writers, because there's this formula of how we make theater in this world, but they often get read to death. They don't ever make it to their house. So what I was paying attention to were people that were sort of doing it with their own bootstraps, how they could make it. The work changed from when we had lofts to when we had to work in kitchens in our small East Village apartments. So, and it's also the work that I do often is giving voice to those who don't have a voice yet in the mainstream.
And there's a lot of them.
Yeah. But, for instance, one of the people that started under PS 122 is Tim Miller, who's a solo performer now. But he became very popular at PS 122. He would take his rehearsal time, which was 6 to like 11, and he would come at 6 with whatever he had found on his way there. At 9 o'clock, he would do a show. Some of it written, some of it not, some of it improv. And the thing is that he was a gay man who had never spent time in the closet. And at that time, early 80s, that was really radical,
Oh, I was radical?
That was radical.
Who knew?
Yeah. No, it comes from, it was coming out of the boys in the band world. Do you understand?
First play I ever saw in New York on my own.
Wow. So, Tim was really important to making PS 122 live. And then when we got to, when I ended up doing Under the Radar, I was platforming a lot of artists that had not been, well, there was a wave of artists, Richard Maxwell, Young Jean Lee, a lot of, Elevator Repair Service, lots of people were kind of a wave of people working in a certain way, an ensemble theater working way. Many of them writers. Richard Maxwell is a writer, but the way he directs or the way he controls his environment is really different. And he wouldn't get arrested in the American theater, probably. They would read this and they go like, okay, we need a star, and then we need a director, and how are we going to do this?
If I'm not mistaken, his aesthetic sort of tamps down emotion. He has things done very unemotional, very monotone.
Yeah.
And it's just part of who he is, part of what he does.
Yeah.
So yeah, that definitely would have a hard time making it in the commercial world. But he's certainly made a name for himself in the world that he's in.
Yeah.
So
well, I think he's one of the more important playwrights from the 2000s or the 90s, 2000s, and he influenced a lot of folks, and especially people like Tina Sater, who just made her movie.
I want to make one comment, Eric. I want you to know, Eric, that we're going to get to what you're talking about. I'm saving it for the end. And Richard, R.K. Green says, Richard Maxwell credits you with his career. What made Maxwell's work appealing for PS 122? Well, it checks the boxes that you mentioned already. It's performance. It's about a specific interaction between what's going on stage and the audience. And the audience has to be willing to go on that journey or not.
Yeah, actually, Richard's story presages what eventually I used to make Under the Radar, because I knew about this conference called the Arts Presenters Conference, and it happened in the depths of early January, and it was 4,000 people coming to New York mostly from the US, but around the world, that would have the ability to book things, to greenlight things, and commission things and make them and get them to different audiences around the country. And so I would always take people that I thought were really special and ready to go, and one was Richard Maxwell, and do his work as part of my season, but at that time. And he was sort of picked up, from that performance. He was invited to Avignon, et cetera, and which was nice. The European track can really support you and help you grow your work, you know. People like Caden Manson with Big Art Group also came up that way. So then when I was making Under the Radar, I knew that I needed to set it at that time. First of all, the Times doesn't have that much to cover early in January, and no one else is in the water. I'm not like going up against a Lincoln Center show. Most of the Broadway shows are they're just coasting. So you know, it made for this rich, weird time for people to see theater, or for there to be a theater festival. And the other thing is, hotels were cheaper.
Those days.
They still are. You know, I mean, I used to get the last time we did this, we got hotel rooms for people for $120 a night.
We're gonna get to some questions soon, but I want to say one thing we haven't really touched on, and it's key to Under the Radar, is your ability to bring in work from around the world. It was international. So tell us about that. That's probably something you couldn't have done at PS 122, because you're responsible for helping people get to the country, get here, aren't you?
Yeah.
Visas and all that.
Visas and all that. I did a lot of international work at PS 122. A gentleman named Eddie Izzard came.
Eddie Izzard.
Ken Campbell. I mean, Eddie Izzard came because he had enough money to go right straight to Broadway, but he decided, and I think it was a genius, to start in this little funky place, this performance space, where the American audience could own it. They discovered Eddie Izzard, and after that, actually, in one of the times we brought him, we did our last show at Webster Hall and sold that out. So so I had always been dealing with that. Howie the Rookie is also another one that came there. Amazing piece. So what I did, why was it an international festival? Because I wanted to lift up the work that was coming from New York and the rest of the country and put it on equal status with the international people. And many of these international things, they're very well funded, they're very well traveled, they know how to tour. I was getting them sometimes a year or two late, but it said something to a certain audience, or especially to a professional audience, that like, oh, here's Richard Maxwell. He's the same as this, you know, as Jerome Bell. So let's go see that. I don't know this guy. He must be good because he's on the same bill with Jerome Bell, you know.
To what degree were you responsible for bringing in money, or have you been funded and didn't have those kinds of pressures on you, like the ticket sales?
I had in the beginning of Under the Radar, I had some substantial funding from the Mellon Foundation and from the Doris Duke Foundation. And then
Ben Cameron? Was that Ben Cameron?
Let's see. Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Olga Garay actually was at that time. It was like, and actually the Mellon Foundation funded us for longer than they should. They're not supposed to, at that time, they weren't supposed to be funding a festival, but they kept on doing it. And then I eventually turned that over to, made a sort of an exit grant that, and was sort of supported by the public completely. I would always get different small bits of money to support different shows, whether it might be money coming from a government or from a special donor, you know, and I kept those relationships going, but it wasn't nearly, and that would add to, and it would help me with my income goals, you know.
So you did have income goals. Okay, good.
Oh, you bet, you know. We were very good and I'm pretty proud of our ability to lose all the money they wanted to give us to the dime, you know.
They do that on Broadway too.
Exactly.
Um, so I want to get to one of the other key questions before I get to the questions in the room. Eric brings it up. Eric Rothman brings this up. There was an announcement this week. I think, was it yesterday or was it a couple days ago? That the public theater is no longer going to be hosting the Under the Radar Festival. Can you tell us a little bit about why, and you can actually complain about it too if you want, but just let us know what you're going through and what your plans are in terms of dealing with this.
Well, on Monday, May 15th, that they brought me in, and I thought I was going to be pitching my season, telling them what was going to come up. And but at the last minute, the CEO also joined us, Patrick Willingham, and they said, you know, the public theater can no longer produce Under the Radar. Now, they were facing, and they still are facing, a $10 million deficit. And that was going to take radical cutting. And it has. And it's still going on, that cutting. And I was maybe the lowest hanging fruit.
Yes and no, because I mean, you're very visible, you're very well known and respected. You're just basically an icon of the New York theater scene. So I guess low hanging fruit can still be sweet.
Yeah, I hope so. You know, but you know, I'm very close to a retirement age and stuff like that. I'm an old white director of a certain age, and you know, and I actually I was working on trying my own sort of system of getting out of the way of the next generation, and trying to find a way to support that generation in taking on the work that I love. But the public was really under a lot of stress over the last 4 years, and you know, it was becoming very difficult to support us, or even support the idea of the legacy building that I was trying to do.
So part of the narrative I heard was that you're talking about. Are you talking about retiring, or are you looking for opportunities to keep under the radar in some other form?
Oh, I'm not ready to retire. No.
Oh, good. Okay. You mentioned that, and I thought, no.
I think that would be a dangerous thing for the streets of New York if I started to retire. Not a good idea. But yeah. I have ideas, and I am planning on a different version, a reimagined Under the Radar for 2024, January 2024.
So let me ask you this. What is it that you would like to see happen with Under the Radar that would be different from what you're doing already? What have you learned in 21 years of doing this that you've gone, gee, you know, that was then, this is now, time for something new?
Well, and you know,
anything?
I mean, I've known that the world has changed. I've been watching the scene change, and where Under the Radar was started in 2004-5 to answer a certain question: why are some of our greatest theater makers not touring the regional theaters? You know, and
now you bring this up. This is very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I mean, if you're going to, the Rolling Stones of American theater are the Wooster Group. Okay, I mean, I think they're pretty freaking amazing. And if you're going to write the history of American theater, you've got to top that the Wooster Group was working at this time, and making lots of innovations and changing things and provoke a lot of provocative performances. But they rarely played American theaters. They weren't getting a gig at the Guthrie. they got a gig for a couple of weeks at the Walker Arts Center. So what's up with that? That was the question, was on everyone's mind around that. And so that's what my symposium, or my money was for a meeting, a conference to discuss that. But instead of making it a discussion, I made it a festival so that everyone had to watch the work. Because you can have these conferences, I noticed a lot of theater conferences, people talk about how great they are on a panel, or or what they're doing, but you're not seeing the work. So I made them force march through a lot of work. And they were theater people, and they were going to see it with presenters from a different world. But walking out of a theater piece, or a piece at that first Under the Radar, you could say, hey, that would never work for my audience. And then someone could say, oh, I love that. That would work totally for my audience. And then you get into an alignment of aesthetics, or an understanding of aesthetics that really helps. Then I might call you going, that thing you hated? I have another thing that's really hateable. You should book.
You thought you hated this. Wait do you see this? Okay.
Yeah,
right.
wait till you see this one. It's really going to drive you nuts. But and it's about friend building. That was what it was. So that question, as I came through it, I began to understand a little more. I thought I was a person of the theater. I wasn't. I'm a presenter, essentially. And the ways of the American theater were a little bit foreign to me, as far as how we make these things, or the values they had. So
yeah, I'm with you on the values. I do question that sometimes.
Yeah. So and then now the touring world that it was kind of built on, some of Under the Radar, was beginning to fall apart. It was becoming like, okay, you can get a gig at Under the Radar, but are you actually going to get offers to tour? And for a while, there was like one time we did a show at 10 a.m. in the morning, and by noon they had 20 offers to go touring.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was a group from the Netherlands that even the Europeans hadn't known about.
So your festival, in addition to everything else that it is and was an opportunity for artists to get exposure, and hopefully it's a step on the road to other performance, other exposures. I don't want to call them productions exactly, but I guess it's a production.
No, I mean, one group, the Nature Theater of Oklahoma, was picked up, and they had a long residency at the Berg Theater in Vienna, where they were creating a 24-hour piece called Life and Times.
Vienna. I'm going to be there tomorrow.
Oh,
I mean, Sunday. I'll be there on Sunday.
Beautiful, beautiful city. I'm really jealous of your trip. It's going to be amazing. Amazing. Make sure you go to a ruin bar when you get to Budapest.
Oh, a ruin bar. Okay.
A ruin bar. They take over really ruined buildings and make clubs out of them.
Got it. Okay.
Anyway,
Owen, I'm going to ask you to start bringing in some of the questions from the room.
All right. First question from Eric. What are you looking at for your next venue, your next type of performances?
You started to touch on that.
Yeah. I'm trying actually to take a sort of a big step back. I'm really trying to scan the field again to see what needs to be seen now. It's almost been easier for me to see the work overseas than it has been to find the work in New York City. I felt like last year when I was doing the Under the Radar Festival, it was almost like a fantasy land of what the downtown used to be. A little tight, because we used to run from club to house to, performance space, loft, and saw mind-blowing work all the way around, and some really lousy stuff. That isn't quite the case, although there is a sort of a scene definitely out in Brooklyn, and there's definitely a scene in the alt comedy world. That's more likely now where some of the best theater is being developed, where the most adventurous theater.
I've been trying to get the Brick to come and be guests. I want somebody from the Brick to be here at some point.
You
maybe.
have to get Teresa. She's amazing. She's amazing.
Put in a word for me.
I will.
Okay. And who's next?
Next question also from Eric. Do you select performances yourself or do you have a team?
I sign off on these performances, and they're things I have seen and I brought to the table and I think will work. But in my mind, I'm rather collaborative. And so if someone comes in with an idea and they happen to be just the intern, they get the same kind of listening to, and I've done that. I've taken something from, someone going, well, my friends over in Brooklyn are doing this thing and you got to see it, and boom.
I have a question. Did you ever pass on anything that you later regretted?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I mean, actually, I regret not doing Tina Sater when she was just coming up. I've missed on a lot of things, and there's some really amazing artists. Annie Dorson also, and it just somehow the budgets or the timelines or the way the festival was shaping up didn't click. And so I screw up all the time, but
it's not screwing up. It's just having an opinion. Sometimes just misjudging something. I think everybody in this room has probably misjudged something at some point in their lives.
Yeah. I had a long talk when I was at PS 122 with this young woman named Anna DeVere Smith. And I was trying to figure out how she was going to do her show, what her work was, by being in the East Village. And the money that it would take, I would have to support her for 6 months to be in the East Village to tell stories. What's this? And thank God she went down the road and George Wolf fixed that, but that was
that's a pretty good one. Passing on Anna DeVere Smith. That's pretty good.
Yeah. She's only a genius. What else was I saying? I don't know. I've lost it. I'm sorry.
So, and keep on, because I know there's a bunch of questions.
Yep. From Stephen Lloyd Helper. What do you think about the coincidence of the announcement of the end of the public support for Under the Radar and producing the Alicia Keys musical?
I'm excited about the Alicia Keys musical. I think it's going to be freaking great, because Chris Diaz, who's written it, used to be my bouncer at the club that we used to have as at Under the Radar. So they had to make some really hard decisions at the public theater, and I would have made different ones, but they made this one. And I know Oscar pretty well, and I know it was a hard call for him. I think it was a really hard call. I mean, Oscar built up this beautiful thing that we were doing 12 shows, 2 Shakespeare's and a pageant, and we had hit things with Hamilton, and it was beginning to develop an endowment, and so things were going, and he had built all of that. He had engendered that. He was telling me to be more adventurous, actually, but after COVID, and he's had to take it apart piece by piece. In fact, I know that he had to kill his own show that he was going to be directing this year. So,
did they leave the door open for something in the future?
They keep saying that I'm on hiatus, But
Okay.
I think that's I don't think I can come back. I mean, I'm fired for one thing. You know, if I'm on hiatus, you'd think they might give me some sort of stipend to keep there, but that's gone. And you know, those 18 years, we will never be able to do an under the radar exactly that way until I get another sponsor that is going to be that generous. You know, basically what the public did was they had a budget for me that was like a 4-person show play, you know, and I had that much money to play with and run. And the best part about it was usually me and one other person most all year round. And then, but when I needed an accountant, a company manager, a producer, I had them. They were already working and they were the best in the business. Were working at the public theater. I only needed the executive director to sign one check. So I had it very well, a very good time. We had a great run. I'm really proud of that. It hurts, you know. I mean, I had more to say, and I had a lot of artists that I was going to be bringing over, and even funding arranged for them, but that had to stop, you know. So now I'm actually trying to reimagine under the radar or a festival. What I think the city needs the festival. So what should that festival look like? You know,
Just to comment on that, the festival, excuse me, there are so many fewer festivals now than we used to have. I can't imagine losing under the radar now, but there's very little left right now. So we have to start building something.
Yeah. I mean,
because the festivals, like you finally maybe realize, your festival is an opportunity for people to be seen and for them to actually be able to extend their reach by being seen and discovered and embraced and produced everywhere else. We need more of that. Whether it's under the radar or a lot of the other, we don't have the Fringe Festival. It's no longer with us. NYMF is no longer with us.
Yeah,
we've lost
there's
one
so
after
many.
another.
So many. What was I going to say? I'm sorry. Oh, Christ. Yeah, I mean, I think basically this is a signal of what's going on in the field here. And the theater field in New York City is really hurting. And it's one of the kingpins, it's one of the linchpins of American theater. And if they keep starving it, it's not going to be pretty. There's nothing for these people in the really high rises to go see. And or to keep up whatever the ideas and the mystery and the magic of what Manhattan brings, you know. So I think there's a real hunger. I mean, I don't know if people know, people started putting flowers and letters at the doorstep of the public theater. They made a little memorial for Under the Radar, which is kind of odd because it's just a festival. But I think it really hit people that this was a great loss. And it's also a cumulative loss. Like we lost the Lark, we lost those festivals, there's so many places that were generating and for artists that are gone.
Yeah, basically we're losing the incubators for art. We basically, this New York was an incubator for art and for theater specifically, and less and less, there's fewer and fewer opportunities, it seems. I don't want to be pessimistic about it. I do believe that there are probably things being born right now that we don't even know about, and that it's all going to come back. I just think it's cyclical. but right now it does seem kind of empty, a little,
Yep.
a little empty.
I mean, I know that somewhere it's happening.
Yeah,
I know it, there's, I mean, now Bushwick Star is considered an established institution, right? But I know there's another one coming up, and there's, it's just to be able to see it and understand it and decide that it needs to have a higher platform.
like I said, I'm trying to get the brick, and I also wanted to get the kitchen, although I was told by the press agent that I was never going to get anybody from the kitchen to come on my show. So whatever. So I mean, I am trying to keep an awareness going of the different pockets of opportunity and the different alternative venues that we have in our city, in our boroughs, not just in Manhattan. We'll see how we'll see what starts developing that we're not aware of now, because things aren't always obvious. We don't always know that they're happening when they're happening.
Right. I think, and also New Yorkers are really resourceful and pretty flexible and resilient. And I'm counting on the resilience of New Yorkers.
I think it's there. Do you have time for more questions or?
Sure.
Oh, okay. Owen, keep going, because I think there's a lot more.
All right, from Eric, do you have any interest in exploring the possibilities of XR for live or recorded performance?
Extended reality forms.
Oh, what's interesting is now that I'm out of the public, there may be more opportunities to explore digital performances, XR performances. I mean, this new cutting edge of it, because the public is an equity house, and some of the houses are union houses. So it gets very expensive. You turn on a camera in one of those houses, rightly so. But
actually, you
now,
can't. Sometimes you can't turn on the camera. You just are prevented from doing it.
Yeah. So now I may have more opportunities to work that way, because I've always thought that it would be great if there were some of our performances available on the net.
Okay. Next.
From Nils, if a show wants to tour regionally or otherwise, how do you recommend they go about it?
Are you involved in the touring aspect of it?
I mean, to some extent. I mean, one of the things we started a couple of years ago is Under the Radar on the Road, and it was the only thing that was left when we had to finally cancel in 22 or whatever it was. I don't know. I mean, how do you get out there? It's through relationships. It's through, I mean, one of the best ways was this time when all these people are looking at work, and it's very hard to cold call those pieces. You could get the APAP list and mail it to them, but they don't really respond that way. You need to be seen in your own city, and then build on those people that or even if people back in Chicago, etc. I mean, that sounds pretty Pollyanny, but it's not easy right now. There used to be a lot more channels to go. You could go to the National Performance Network or the Roots Network, or different things that would help you get tours, but those are pretty strapped right now themselves.
Oh, and I think Fangar has an interesting question. Oh,
if you see it, please read it out. I don't see it.
Okay. Fangar wants to know: do you believe in primacy of imagination, or has identity politics hurt freedom in the theater, especially for playwrights who would prefer to explore other cultures, genders, races, ages, etc.? But if they dare to write about other cultures, they're accused of daring to appropriate them as if that is inherently immoral. So cultural improvement, there's a minefield for you. So,
Yeah.
would you like to step in it?
Oh yeah, I'm used to that. Well, it's especially sensitive and extensive minefield at the moment, and it has been, and I think these things will go back and forth. There'll be probably a almost response to the sort of political correctness that it feels like handcuffs sometimes. Also, I don't know. I think there's ways of looking at that and writing from your perspective, the perspective of your honesty, that can make those things happen. That you may have to flip it in a certain way, you know. Actually, you know, I've been thinking a lot about the play Indians from way
Arthur
back,
yeah.
right? And I saw an amazing production of it when I was in college, and yeah, so that could never be done now, most likely, but it was actually a very touching and really key story.
It was well done, and of course now there's the tragedy of the fact that we had our first, well, maybe second, but our first in decades, a Native American playwright produced on Broadway, and it wasn't able to hang in there. It's very frustrating, very frustrating.
Well, I mean, you know, I think it's different. I mean, to be a writer these days it's a dangerous profession. And I have so much respect, you know, for the people that do face that white page and get things out. It's one of the most brave acts you can do, I think. Some playwrights think I am the evil devil because I'm talking about devised work and not work coming just from the page and into the machine. But I'm really trying to get towards theater. Like, Brother Size is a written piece, and he wrote it for his friends at Yale. And he had a friend that directed it at Yale. And that friend actually said, let's keep the stage instructions in. And they came up with this piece, which is completely fresh and original. And I wanted to get, I heard about this piece and I knew it was being read around the city. And I thought, you know, at this rate, it's going to take 4 years for it to be read around the city and for them to get Denzel to play the main character, for this thing to get up. So I want to do it with the people that made it with Terrell. And it had a certain strength and authenticity that you just can't, you know, I wish I could see the original version of Beckett's Godot, you know. What was that like?
Well, I only see a couple more.
I've run them off. Thank God.
I think I think it's we may need to end very soon.
Yeah.
Oh, did I miss anybody else?
There's a question from Eric about what media you rely on for promotion and coverage and how that's changed over time.
Well, I mean, it used to be VHS video cassettes, and that was a nightmare. And then DVDs, another sort of nightmare. And now the fact that they can be downloaded from the net is beautiful. They can be streamed, and it's so much more useful and so much more immediate, you know. So that's changed for the good for me. I watch a lot of video, but I watch video to see what I need to see live.
Which goes back to our first conversation, which is the difference between Why theater? Why
Yeah.
not film? So if I'd known it, I would have actually titled this "Why Theater? Why Not Film?"
Well,
But
right now I'm in, why do a festival? Why should we do a festival now? You know, what use is it, or can it still be useful and relevant to this artistic community and this audience?
well, I would say that if we just look at the Edinburgh, the Edinburgh Festival Fringe, and we look at how that, I mean, I don't think we need 2,000 pieces in our city at the same time, but basically what the Edinburgh Festival Fringe has done is provided opportunities for hundreds, well, thousands of artists, although not everybody has the same success. Obviously, it's just a very small percentage of the people that are seen there that actually get picked up and have further opportunities. But just the fact that as a model is so exciting and so vibrant, I think kind of is a strong argument in favor of us trying to find more ways of creating theater experiences here in our city.
Yeah.
Of all sorts.
Mhm. Yeah.
Rusty Thalen wants to know if you can go back to St. Anne's. You don't have to answer that, but just think about it.
I don't think Susan wants me back. I love her, and she was great supporting us in the early days. But they have their own sort of track they're on right now. You know.
So other partnerships that Susan Crawford is suggesting are theater for the new city. If you want to find some way of partnering with Crystal.
Yeah.
The
I
players,
love that room. I wish, you know, that's my dream to take that space on, but that won't happen. But
well, you never know.
Yeah.
If you set up a meeting at the right time, who knows what might happen.
I used to rent her space from across the street when I was at PS 122, and we had a great time. You know, we had some really great collaborations.
I bet if you talk to her about it, I bet there's a conversation there.
If I come with money, that would open things up.
Well, you seem to be a guy who knows how to get it. So make your magic happen.
I'm trying, honey. Oh, baby.
Yeah. So that's, I think that's it for today. I mean, it's 6:46. Normally we stop at 6:30, but we had so many questions and you have so many interesting things to say. Mark, I've known you for a long time. We haven't really had brunch together,
Yeah.
which maybe we should put on the list.
We should.
But I've always enjoyed having you as a guest, and I've always been very grateful for the degree of support that you give it, the support and respect that you show. TRU. Not everybody always has. So thank you for that over the years. And I'm going to go into speaker view and say thanks to everybody who was here today. Thanks to everybody in the room. Thanks for my loyal community who come here every week. And for those of you out there who are new to us, email me, trunltd@aol.com, trunltd@aol.com, so we can put you on the Zoom list and we can have you come in and be part of the conversations. We'd love to have you. We do this for free as a community service. We've been doing it since shutdown started. Now we're in a situation where we're going back into live performance. And so I got venues to pay for. I've got expenses for live programming that are actually more than they have been for virtual programming. So if you want to support us and if you want to see us keep going, go to trudonate.com, trudonate.com. That's trudonate.com. And join us over the next couple of weeks. We're going to have guest moderators because I'm going to be on vacation. My first vacation in 10 years. So that's it, everyone.
Enjoy your vacation.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you so much, Mark.
And thanks for listening to me and the questions. And let's see if we can make something together. I think that the world is open for this now.
I agree. Thank you.